One of the many things that I don't understand on top of, math, science, why Tom Brady left us. Why, Tom? Why? And by the way, when I started recording this, it is currently 5:36 p.m. on September 19th, and Tom Brady has thrown 3 touchdown passes, is up by 2 touchdowns, and has thrown 2 touchdowns to Rob Gronkowski. So, why, Tom? We had something so special. Anyways, one of the things that I don't really understand is, or I'm surprised by, I guess, is people seem to think that I'm a nice, positive person. And I try to be as nice as possible. I think the difference between me and a lot of people is that they vocalize the hateful, dark things that they are thinking, and they get it out. And I instead push them deep down inside, and then my farts smell like cream cheese. So I don't know what that means, but I do try to be a nice person, but I don't want it to come off like I'm not a human being who has angry and mean and I've done mean things. I've flipped off people. It's always fun when you're driving. As you get closer to the house, you're like, can I fucking beep at this person? Or what if they live in my neighborhood or my complex or something? So I think that actually is also a part of it. Is I dislike confrontation because I think that's how you know if you're a good person. I think good people don't beep or yell at. I've said terrible, terrible things about and to people from the safety of my own car. And I'm going to continue to do that because that's my safe zone, my safe place. And if they can't hear me, they're much less likely to get mad. I'll smile at somebody like, hey, fuckface. Like they think I'm letting them in. But in my heart and my soul and in my car by myself, I'm like, I hope you get a flat tire and you're late to work and you lose your job and your kids hate you. So I do have, and I'm not happy about that. I'm not bragging about it, that I sometimes think terrible, terrible thoughts. It's actually something I want to work on. As some of you may know, if you're listening in the future, there is a holiday called Yom Kippur for the Jewish people where we make atonements for all the and for all the non-Jews out there. Atone is like we apologize for all the bad things we've done over the past year. Jews, we're a what's the word I'm looking for? We like to be efficient. We're an efficient bunch with our money and with our apologizing. And I know some religions do confession, and you're supposed to do that on a regular basis. Us Jews, we're just like, well, we're just going to set aside 24 hours, get it all out in the open, don't eat, like be a little bit grumpy for the whole day, and then it's forgiven. Also, don't hold that. I'm not exactly sure if that's correct, but that's what I think it was. And this past week was that holiday. It's called Yom Kippur. It's kind of close to Yom on a holiday that we can't eat, but that's not why I'm here. And I was just thinking about, everything that I remember from being a kid, hearing about this holiday is we're supposed to apologize to other people. And something that I haven't heard as much, and I don't hear as much in just everyday life is, realizing how you've hurt yourself and just realizing what you have to work on. And as you know, obviously I'm Jewish, and if the nose didn't, I've been told I don't have a Jewish nose, and not sure how to take that, to be honest. It feels like that might be something you don't tell people. It's like, hey, you don't look like a dirty Jew. Well, thanks. Gracias. But something I was just thinking about this on the drive into the office today, and I don't know. I know as much as I know about Judaism, which is almost nothing. I know even less about Christianity, and all of that. But I've heard of the 7 deadly sins, and I just looked it up to see what they were, and I am guilty of 100%. I'm going to hell in Catholicism. So as I was reading them, I thought that they would be a good starting place for me to come clean and just admit where I've done wrong, and hopefully will continue to try to get better. I do a lot of these on a daily basis. So one day at a time, and I'm gonna put a little board up in my room, and it's gonna be like days since you committed a deadly sin, and if I get to 10, then I get to eat at McDonald's. Nope, that's not good. That's gluttony. That's not. I don't know what I get, but I get something, and it's not gonna happen. Because I was reading through this, and it was like reading through my online dating profile, if I was being honest. So the first one, and I'm on Wikipedia, which, as you know, is a very reliable source. And by the way, I don't have a Wikipedia yet, and I don't know if that's good or bad. Probably shouldn't have told anybody that. Also, not exactly sure that I don't have. I'm almost positive. I haven't Googled myself in a long time, which I think is good for the deadly sins. I think one of them is pride. So, the first deadly sin that I've heard about is lust and sexual desire, as it's quoted in Wikipedia, unbridled sexual desire. I am definitely guilty of that. I think a lot of guys, and I'm not going to throw everyone under the bus, have made terrible decisions based off of wanting my dick to feel good. I've told this story before. I have a Google Voice number for someone that I hooked up with because I didn't want her to have my real phone number. You can do that, by the way. But here's the thing. I had that, and she still does not have my real phone number. And so this is someone who I went out with a couple times, knew right after the first date that I did not want to go out with her, but she was willing to have sex with me, and that I was at a time in my life, which is probably the majority of my life, where I was unable or unwilling or both to say no to that. And her last text message to me was last year. I'll read it to you because I find it very funny. It was, let's see if I can find it here. Hold on. Yep. September 7th. It's been a full year. September 7th of 2020. And it was, am I still your favorite cocksucker? And the answer to that is no. Sorry. But I think a lot of people have that person. I know girls not complain about it, but they're like, oh, I texted my ex, this and that. Guys, I feel like I have it. I have, sometimes when it's been a while, you're like, I'm not texting. I even have do not answer on a couple people's phone numbers, and I'm in a relationship now, so it doesn't matter. And they're not calling. It's not like I'm like beating them away with a stick. It was me. Every couple months when I would get lonely, I'd be like, well, maybe she's not that the same person. And it turns out everyone's always the same person. Not to say that I was anywhere close to a catch at all, but it's, I think, and this kind of relates to the second one, which is gluttony. And I feel like, frankly, it relates to all of them. If you let anything like this lead all of your decisions, or if you're not thinking logically. I think that's what my takeaway is going to be from the seven deadly sins is like, if I let, or when I let my desires or my human side, not that I'm Spock. I don't really, and by the way, the only thing I know about Spock is from that movie. Like, I haven't seen any of the original stuff. I wonder if I'm sure it's good. I haven't seen any of it, but I kind of wish I was a computer. I feel like I'd be a great computer, and I wish things were more computer I wish people acted in like logical ways and weren't pieces of shit. Sometimes, not everyone. I think I don't know what the scale is. I don't know if it's a majority of people are good. I think maybe it's closer to 50-50, and it's also subjective, and because I think about that a lot is if people knew if the laws today were put in place 100 years ago, a lot more people would be in jail. Like, beating your wife used to be okay, I feel like, or at least accepted, and your kids. By the way, I've been dating someone with kids now for this is about 2.5 months in, and it just made me realize how lucky I was as a child with my parents, because sometimes kids can be frustrating. I'll put it that way, because as an adult, you know what you're saying is right, and then I feel like kids act like a drunk friend who's a little bit too cocky. He's like, no, I know. Sometimes like if you're out on the like at a bar or out somewhere and you're like, how do we get here? And they're like, I know. And you're like, well, you haven't been here before, but they just said it with such conviction. Like, maybe they just have a sense for these things, and then they don't know. So I forget why I got into kids being. I don't know. I have no idea where I was going with that, but we're gonna move on. Someone will know. And you know what's funny? I am not even a little bit high. I just got so in my head about the kids being a struggle that. Oh, and yeah, and by the way, the thing, like, in reading this, it's like, how am I going to be trusted to teach children anything? I used to think I wanted kids, and I still do, but it's also like, shouldn't there be some sort of certification of like, how many times have you been to McDonald's in your life, and it's over 1,000? Maybe, maybe everyone should be in a conservatorship. I know that freedom is something that gets talked about a lot, and everyone's like, don't take away my freedom. Maybe some of my freedoms should be curtailed. I feel like my credit card company should have been like, you've been, over the last month, you've gotten out of 30 days, you've had fast food 25 days. Not currently, just I haven't had fast food in a while, but in the old days, you've had the majority fast food, and not even close. Maybe you shouldn't be allowed to choose what you eat. And that's actually a good segue into gluttony. I think there could be gluttony with a lot of things. There could be gluttony about sex, probably, and drinking too much, maybe drugs. Who knows? But I have the OG form of gluttony. I'm just never gonna remember where I was going before. I was trying to, and I'm just never going to. So that was fun for you. But I have the OG form of gluttony, which is food, and that since I've been good for almost a year, it really shows me how how crazy it was the way I used to be eating, and it's sort of like a kid where you tell kids like, hey, you can't do this right now, and you're like, and they say, well, but I want to, and people told me, and I knew that I probably shouldn't get $20 of McDonald's every day. And by the way, it's hard. It takes some effort to buy and eat $20 worth of McDonald's. And I would do it on a regular basis. Like I picked up a drink for my mom on the way home today, and I was just impressed and also annoyed with myself that I was going through a drive-through and got zero for myself. But like I used to like just crazy amounts of food. Like just for an example, let's just imagine that let's just use McDonald's for an example. This would be a multiple times a week occurrence. So I would get a meal, always large, and it would either be a double quarter pounder with cheese or a Big Mac, usually. And then I would either get 1 or 2 McChickens and maybe a nugget. And then that doesn't include, by the way, just a heads up, if you are a skinny person or someone with self-control and you like chocolate chip cookies, McDonald's cookies are vastly underrated. So you have to get 3 or 4 of those. And then right before I started losing weight, the large fry wasn't enough because you got to put fries in the sandwich. And then when you take it out of the large fry, that screws up my rhythm. So you have to get a small fry solely to put in the sandwich. And this isn't like, oh, Lee's having a cheat day. This is a Tuesday, and we did it yesterday, and we're probably going to do it tomorrow. So gluttony, maybe that should have been the name of the Wasteland podcast. It should have been like Glutton Lee. No, that would have been upsetting. But it was, gluttony is probably the worst one that I had, I think. The next one is sloth. The next one is sloth. But before we get to sloth, because I am 100% guilty of sloth, I wanted to thank my bookie for sponsoring the show. Already eliminated from your work survivor pool? Well, don't sweat it, because my bookie is kicking off a free $50,000 survivor contest for week 3 of the NFL. It was just week 2. The end of week 2 is tonight for Monday Night Football. So get ready for week 3 and the MyBookie free $50,000 survivor contest. Whether you're a new or existing customer, if you've made a deposit with MyBookie, you'll earn an entry into the $50,000 survivor contest absolutely free. To play, all you need to do is pick one winner a week to keep your streak alive and have a shot at the grand prize. Make your first deposit now using promo code LEE, that's L-E-E, and they'll double your funds. That's double your money to double your winnings. That's promo code LEE for a double deposit bonus and a ticket into the MyBookie Survivor Contest. Thank you very much to MyBookie. Don't forget, promo code LEE. But like I said, the next deadly sin, the third deadly sin is sloth. And let's just put it this way. Before I was losing weight, I would have multiple days where my steps were under 1,000. And in my opinion, you really have to, give it a good shot. You really have to try. Excuse me as I itch my nose. You really have to try to get under 1,000 steps. That's a day where, was I sick or, working a lot? No. There would be days where it was just the bed and you roll over from one side, roll over to the other, take a nap, jerk off, see what's on Instagram, nothing. My girlfriend right now gives me so much shit for being on my phone, and it is technically part of my job being on social media, but not really. When I'm not really posting, I am just I have probably the strongest thumb game in the world, and I'm just doing that way too much. It's a lot better now, but there would be days where I would just do nothing, and those days are okay. I feel, and I think this is probably something also to add into this. I don't think anybody can do none of this. I don't think there's one perfect person who does zero of any of these, But I think what the problem is, or the problem I ran into, is when you're doing all of them all the time, and it's just it. I don't think anybody's ever I don't think anyone has ever lived a perfect life, according to either them or the Bible or their friends. No one's perfect. But I do think that at least I'm aware that I did all this way too much. And something that is very specific to me. All these hit home so much. Greed is the next one. And I can be I think greed, and I know envy is also one of these. Um I think greed and envy really go hand in hand, and I have definitely been uh guilty of greed. To me, greed is one of my least favorite ones. Sometimes you eat too much, you get horny, this and that, but greed really shows your true colors, I think. I think greed is one of the ones where I haven't had as much greed, but like, for example, I remember one time a friend of mine asked to borrow $100, and we hadn't spoken in a while, and I had the $100, and I didn't do it. And I know that, I don't know if that's considered greed. I think it might be. Um, I know sometimes greed is asking for too much, or just hoarding onto things. And I mean, I've done that with food. I've done that. Like, sometimes, you'll hide stuff. I just being honest. Sometimes, like, well, like, I lived with a girl before, like, well, I don't want her to eat these Cheetos. Or you buy something cheap as a gift. Cause, like, well, do they really I'm gonna break up with them anyways? Or greed is a tough one for me. Not only because I feel like Jews get what's the word, scapegoated as greedy, but I guess if there was anyone that I'm not too greedy, I don't think I'm that greedy. I think I can be cheap for sure. I try to pride myself on being a good tipper, but I think where my greed comes in is when I I'm nervous about money. And like, I'll never forget when I first started working with Joey full time. I I spent like a couple days doing those online surveys where you get paid like 15 cents a survey. And something that I heard a while ago when I was a server, which I stand by, is if you can't afford to tip, you shouldn't be going out. And coming from the point of view of being a server, I totally stand by that. I think tipping it really shows if you're a good person or not. And I'm ashamed to admit that there have been times where the service was just okay, and you sometimes get a 15% tip. I try to never go below 18, but that's one where I do get kind of something about housekeeping at hotels. I thought I was doing okay with that. Like, I would try to give like at least $1 a day, but like, there was one time I was telling my girlfriend last night, when I was in Milwaukee last year around this time, Halloween candy came out, and I had gotten a pack of mini not Reese's. I got those too, but I got a pack of mini Kit Kats, and I had snapped like a half of it off and eaten it, but I was stoned, and I must have fallen asleep, or I definitely fell asleep. And I woke up, and chocolate was smeared all over my bed, like I had Tom Brady'd my bed. And I they cleaned. They had to I guess they were probably hoping it was chocolate, but something that I've noticed from comedians, people who travel a lot, they might do like $5 a day. And not everyone can do that, but in realizing that I was giving $1 a day, I was like, it's kind of being cheap. You shouldn't be so greedy with your money. But something that I also, I think this impacts my tipping sometimes, or how I am with money, but wrath is the next one. And I do try to be an even-keeled, nice person, but when I get angry, I get very angry, and I get hot. Like my whole body gets hot, my stomach twists up, and I just obsess about it. And I've never, like, I've gotten into one fight in my life. It was in high school. I think I was a junior or senior, and still, it's funny to say, but a freshman was giving me shit. I was short, like, no surprise, and this guy was a lot bigger than me, and he would just give me shit every time he saw me. And one time in the locker room, he turned the lights off and rushed at me, and I just took his head and I smashed into a locker. And I actually, I know that wrath is bad, but sometimes wrath can be for good. I got suspended, and my mom did not get mad at me, which was awesome. But I definitely hold a grudge against people, and I, like, especially recently, I hold on to things, and I get angry about how people react if they don't react the way that I believe they should. But for some reason, I'm a lot more forgiving with myself. Like, if I do something that someone else did, if they did it to me, I'd be like, you piece of shit. I hope you trip and your toenail rips off. But when I do it, I'm like, stuff happens. But I have definitely let anger in the past. Like, I've quit jobs in anger. I've broken up with people in anger, and like I'm not gonna get too far into it, but and I'm actually looking back on it very happy that it happened. But with my ex from LA, there was definitely anger that spurred a breakup. And could I have been more mature and maybe talked it out? Most likely. Am I now, looking back on it, glad that I was maybe a little bit immature? Oh, yeah. I think everything worked out for the best, but it's not good to let emotions take over things. We all have people in our lives who have acted emotionally, and it almost never works out. It really doesn't. Sometimes it is good to follow your gut, though, but I do think that as much as it's a good idea to follow your gut, to not act or react in anger, at least for me, because I'll say stupid shit. I'll just say things that, even though it's not that I don't mean them, that's a hard line to toe, because I do mean it. And it's something that I've probably thought about, but sort of like Michael Scott, you're like, this is right, or at least in my mind it's right, but it's probably something. I almost said something. It's something that I probably shouldn't vocalize without thinking about the consequences. And I think that's what anger does. And it's definitely what the next one does. We're on 6 out of 7. Envy is something that I am very guilty of. And this relates to an earlier one, which is greed. Envy is one that I am very disappointed in myself sometimes. For example, this is something that I've had never admitted, and I think he probably knows, but I have a younger brother who's very successful, both professionally and then obviously financially. I guess you could have a job that you're very successful at, but maybe it's not a high paying job. But and I think the thing with envy with me is it's not always logical. Like, but in my head, I'm the older brother. I should have a better life than he does, and my life is fine. But he's a lot more successful than me, and it is upsetting. Um, I I even and this is something that is all it's I've always placed a lot of my self-worth on the money that I have or that I make, and I'm not ashamed to admit that Facebook, one of the reasons I got off of Facebook, or I still have it, I just never use it, is there would be people that I went to school with that in my mind were morons, and that now in their 30s they're doing well and probably better than me. And sometimes, you'll justify, like, well, their dad got them a job, but my dad helped me get jobs. Everyone helps everyone, but it will get to me if you should just be happy for someone. But if I see someone doing well or having things that I want that I don't feel for whatever reason either deserves it, or I feel that I'm maybe better than or should have been better than, maybe if I wasn't so lazy and gluttonous and greedy and angry, I would have been. But it will get to me. Like I just get envious. I get envious, and I'm gonna throw an extra one in there. I get jealous a lot. I especially in dating, I'm not proud to admit it, but I get jealous. It's jealous of how people, like, if like someone you broke up with starts dating someone, or maybe it's a mixture of envy, jealousy, and paranoia. I get paranoid. I tell everyone who I date, please don't block me if and when we break up. And I also have a thing where if we get into a fight, I will check social media to make sure that we're still following each other, or I haven't been blocked, because that would be like, that's my clue of when things are bad. And that happens a lot. Like if we disagree about what pizza to order, I'm on Instagram, like, does she still follow me? Oh, thank God. So that is probably the biggest one for me. But the last one is pride. And that, I guess that does relate into envy, because not only do I feel like I should be doing better or that I'm better than people, but I think the other side of pride is my unwillingness to ask for help. And that's not necessarily the only person I'm hurting with. That is myself. I, like, when I moved to LA, I had someone offer me to stay at their place while I looked for an apartment, and I didn't want to do it. I made the excuse, which is true, that I feel awkward in someone else's place, but it's also, I don't like admitting that I need help. And that I think is why it took me a while to get over and not be frustrated with the fact that I've been living at home for this year. Is I never thought that would be where I would be at 33. And I don't know if this is pride or just stupidity, but I didn't realize up until college, I think, maybe high school, way too late, I didn't realize that family, I thought apartments were for during college and maybe right after college, but I grew up so privileged that I didn't understand that, like, adults lived in apartments. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, it's a bad thing that I didn't realize it, but it's not necessarily a bad thing to live in an apartment. And this goes back to envy, but there's people who I haven't talked to in years, and they'll post pictures on Facebook. Oh, they're buying a house, or oh, they went on this vacation. And the fact I look down on myself that I don't have that or aren't doing those things, and feel like I should be, or why aren't I? And I guess this is the final takeaway um, from this talk is I think that all these 7 deadly sins are deadly because they take away from my focus, and they're a waste of time. That's what I think really sticks out to me about this list, is how much of a waste of time all of these deadly sins are, and how much more I could have gotten done and should get done in the future if I could cut these out as much as possible. And that's what I wanted to talk about today, is just how I really don't I think that the word hero, which I've never been called a hero, or if people try to portray a much different version of themselves than what is reality, and I do try to be a nice person, but I hope it's not coming across as like, oh, Lee thinks he's perfect, or Lee never does anything wrong, or oh, Lee's such a nice guy. I'm mean a lot, at least in my head. I might not say it, but I guess that's probably not good. It's probably better to get it out. And that's all of these 7 deadly sins are things I'm going to work on a lot. And I wanted to just thank you for working with me and for listening to this and watching this episode. Don't forget, if you're listening to it, I do have a YouTube channel. I do reaction videos every Thursday. I have another podcast called The Wasteland Podcast. If you'd like to start a podcast, go to Fiverr.com. Check my link tree. I do podcast consulting, and I have a Patreon. So thank you very much for watching, listening. Thank you to my bookie. Don't forget, go to mybookie.ag and sign up using promo code Lee. That's LEE, and they're going to double your deposit, and you're going to get a ticket into the MyBookie Survivor Contest. Thank you to MyBookie. Thank you to you. And I will be back next week with a brand new What Was I Thinking?